Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard. It's been about a couple months since I did my initial video on the upcoming Intellivision Amico game system. What I learned is that there are a lot of people who are passionate both for and against the Intellivision Amico. There are people who think it just looks awesome. There are people who think it's a scam. There are people who are cautiously optimistic. And then there are people who think the government is run by lizard people. So in the intervening months since I did that original video and then my follow-up interview with Tommy Tallarico, there's been some new hardware news on the Amico and some new gameplay footage of some of its work-in-progress games shown. So I figured I'd just wrap all that stuff into a big ball of a new video and push it out here for you. I was originally going to hold off on making this until there was a little more news, but it looks like that's not coming quite as soon as I'd hoped, so I figured I'd just go ahead and put this out now. If anything interesting comes out soon, I will just do a separate video on that. So let me get one thing out of the way first. I do not think the Amico is a scam. No, Intellivision is not associated with me professionally in any way. They're not paying me, they're not providing me with anything. I'm just giving you my own opinions like I do in every other one of my videos. So why don't I think it's a scam then? Well, Tommy Tallarico is someone who has been in the industry for about 30 years. Now, it's true that most of that time was spent in sound design, but he's been around everything. And then a lot of the people who are working either with or for Intellivision are industry veterans who I don't think would get anywhere near the Amico if they thought there was any chance of it being anything other than completely legitimate. On the other hand, I can completely understand why there are some people who are really upset with the Amico, since there are some details that have changed pretty significantly from its initial announcement in 2018. Just looking at the price, it was originally announced at between $150 and $180, but the final price, as we know, is now $250, so almost $100 more than what was originally announced. Early on, online play was also discussed as something that will be coming to the Amico, and for various reasons, that was nixed. There are some other things that are different also, but I'm not going to get into the weeds on all that stuff. Does this mean that I think Intellivision and Tommy Tallarico are nothing but a dirty bunch of liars? No. I think that they are perhaps guilty of being a little overambitious up front, and then had to deal with the reality of the situation later on and adjust their plans accordingly. And this is the very reason why you see companies like Sony and Microsoft waiting until they absolutely have to before they make any announcements on price or specific details. Intellivision's in a different boat, since they're, basically a new company at this point, and they're trying to get the word out there on a brand new product, so they had to get into things a little bit earlier. Still, you definitely want to make sure, no matter what stage of the process you're in, that you don't overpromise. After all, no one wants to see this.
I can guarantee you anything you want.
Then I'll do it.
Hooray! Here's your checkbook.
Now let's jump into what's new. First up, the CPU has been, sort of announced. The Amico will be powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon. Which Snapdragon? Who knows? Snapdragons are found in mobile phones and range in power from entry-level to top of the line. Considering the Amico's price point, I'd say to expect a low to mid-tier Snapdragon chip inside the unit. Depending on the exact chip used, this could end up being pretty good news and more positive in the long run than the unit having ended up with something from Allwinner or MediaTek. We also learned that, unsurprisingly, the Amico is passively cooled. Since the main system on a chip will be one common to phones, that makes perfect sense. Basically, the airflow is directed from vents on the front of the unit to more on the back of the unit. Also, this means no noisy fans. Another thing we learned is that the console and controllers are filled to the brim with RGB lighting, which you may know better as unicorn puke. There are 40 individually addressable LED lights in the base unit and 12 in each controller. I don't really mind it, but honestly it's not something I personally care about. Lots of people love RGB lighting these days though, so that may prove to be a smart move. They talked about using the colors and the lights on both the system and controller during gameplay, and while I get that and it sounds cool to most people, I'm colorblind, so I dread stuff like that. Tommy has said in the past that there will be colorblind modes for gamers like me who suffer from this terrible malady. That's something I hope they stick to, because it's not fun when you're enjoying a game and then basically have to stop forever because it becomes impossible for someone with this kind of handicap to complete. One more thing on the controllers, it's going to take about 2 hours to charge them, and they'll last 4 to 6 hours on a charge. That is pretty rough, I have to say. That's Wii U gamepad level rough. With the types of games on the system, mostly pick up and play experiences and party games, this may not be too big a deal. If there are going to be significant single player experiences though, this is definitely a bummer. So another thing we can talk about here is RFID, which is basically how physical media is going to work with the Amico. So what does this mean? Basically, you can have an Amico physical game come in any shape you want because it's not going to physically plug into the unit. It'll just either go on top of it or close to it or whatever. So you can have games that look like actual old Intellivision cartridges and old Intellivision packages if that's what you want. Or you could have games shaped like basically anything. You could have sort of a toy that looks like a character from the game you're getting. So you could have something like Sesame Street that might have a Big Bird figure that you just plop on top of the unit, and that gets your game up and running. They also did show another 10-minute reel of in-development games in October, and I'm not going to show you all of those. If you want to see them, you can go to Intellivision's own YouTube channel. I'll include a link for that in my description below. But I did pick out some games to show you that I thought would be of most interest to the audience I have that watches this channel. This is Cloudy Mountain, the modern update to the old Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Cloudy Mountain on the original Intellivision. We get just a snippet of it here, but it looks kinda interesting. We've seen a lot of Astro Smash already, but here's a smidge of new footage that looks a little more polished. Here we have our next modern reimagining of a classic Intellivision game with Night Stalker. I think this one looks kind of interesting. It looks a little bit basic, but it has a lot of nice effects and a sort of chaotic allure. We get another quick glance at Breakout, and it looks like good hectic fun. Missile Command still looks early with an inconsistent frame rate. I loved the original when it was new, but I can't say I'm looking particularly forward to this one so far. I hope it can surprise me, but I'm lukewarm on it for now from what we've seen. Nitro Derby is a game I want to like and look forward to. This is another one that just looks kinda rough still and has an inconsistent frame rate, despite seeming like a relatively simple game overall. Hopefully, they can iron that out before release. This is Snafu. It looks to be a fun party version of Light Cycles from Tron, essentially. Finally, we saw a lot more of Moon Patrol. The demo you can play on the mobile app is fun and worth checking out. I still don't think this game looks particularly great, but it still seems interesting, and I'd like to play the full version of the game with a controller instead of the touchscreen. Like a lot of the other games shown in the demo reel from October, this one has an inconsistent frame rate in a lot of places as well. At this point, you may be wondering if the opinion I expressed in my original video on the Amico has changed after the new hardware information and new game footage that I covered here in this video. The answer to that is, not really. Let me give you a fresh rundown of the concerns that I still have about the Amico at this point. Number 1, price. I still think the $250 price is too high and out of sync for the hardware architecture of the system. I don't think it's horrendously overpriced, but personally, I'd be more interested if it came in at $200 instead. Now again, you do get 2 controllers and 6, or more technically, games included with the system, so that does help a bit. What do you all think about the price of the system, my retro gaming friends? Do you disagree with me? Am I wrong on this? 2. The games. A lot of games have been shown and announced for the Amico, and I'm sure that quite a few of them will be a lot of fun to play. But the question is, would you buy an Amico just to play the games that have been shown so far? For me, I'm just not sold on this lineup yet. 3. Mixed messaging. Here's a topic that I haven't discussed before. Tommy Tallarico has said that the Intellivision Amico doesn't have pixel art games at this point, because it's a new system, not a retro system, and he doesn't want it to be confused for one. And that is a totally fair point. Unless you consider that this thing is wrapped from head to toe in the cloak of nostalgia. A lot of the game lineup is made of modernized classic titles. I kind of feel like asking, which is it? Is the Amico a retro system or not? 4. Hardware power. It's obvious the Amico isn't trying to compete on a hardware level with this or even the prior generation of game consoles. But the hardware still has to be capable of delivering a smooth, playable experience. It's disappointing so far to see any of the relatively simple games on the Amico running at under 60 frames per second. They might still be ironed out before release, but we have to wonder if the hardware will be capable enough to deliver on the developers' visions for their games. 5. The controller. I know I've harped on this in my prior videos and earlier in this one, but I still think it has the potential to be the biggest issue with the system. I appreciate that Intellivision is going for something different, simple, and intuitive. Until I'm able to get one in my hands and try it out, I'm going to have my doubts on this. It just doesn't look particularly comfortable or intuitive for standard games. The battery life is now also a major concern with that 4 to 6 hours of life on a charge. So as of late November 2020, I still find the Amico to be an interesting platform and one that I'm definitely going to keep up with. But I'm absolutely not ready to commit to buying one yet from what I've seen and heard so far. I'm also not making a recommendation to anyone else one way or another at this point. I mean, how could I? I haven't seen a thing, I haven't played it, I've never used it, it's still 6 months away from release. Here are some major questions as I still see them regarding the Amico. First, will it make its April 2021 launch date? Next, will the games look significantly more polished by the time they hit the streets, so to speak? Next, is Intellivision going to be able to reach that everybody audience that they're going for with the Amico? And then finally, if the current gen, or I guess last gen systems now, things like, the PS4 and Xbox One, end up getting a price cut before the Amico even comes to market, is it going to get swallowed up at retail by the bigger, more familiar names? I know Tommy Tallarico doesn't think so, but I don't know, I see that as a real possibility, having seen how retail works for a long time. So if nothing else, I still find the Amico an interesting platform, and I am absolutely going to continue to cover it here from time to time. While I'm not ready to commit to buying one myself, who knows? Maybe I'll see something within the next 6 months that convinces me. And that'll just about do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe and help spread the word about the channel. If you would like to leave your own opinions on either the Amico or my take on it, feel free to do so in the comments. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.